when it comes to quarterbacks in the playoffs, you're talking about the highest level of competition in football on planet Earth. And you expect the best players to be on the field in a championship game, right? The best quarterbacks. 2018. Who were the quarterbacks, the 4 quarterbacks in the AFC and the NFC championship games? Who are the 4 quarterbacks starting? 2018.
Oh, it's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing they were terrible because you kind of lined the segment.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Nick Foles?
Nick Foles is one.
Okay. Who did they play? Was it Bortles?
Bortles was another one.
Okay,
Yep.
so I got Foles, Bortles.
Mm-hmm.
He balled out that year. He got the Jags to the AFC Championship game. That's wild. Or Jalen Ramsey did, but
you have one outlier here.
Was it Brady?
Brady.
Okay, Brady.
Yep. And then now you have
Bortles, Foles,
and then you have the other NFC.
So he was not a great quarterback, huh?
There may have been a particular miracle that year.
Oh, was it you know what's crazy? All I could see is Daniel Jones's face. Was it Eli?
That's really
was
funny.
Was it Eli Manning? Who was it?
Case Keenum.
Oh man, he balled out that year too, though.
Mm-hmm.
So in a couple of those cases, those were really, really great years. The Nick Foles thing was crazy, but Case Keenum, like we thought, man, he could get a contract after this. Same thing with Blake Bortles. It's like, oh man, they found their quarterback. Is Bortles even in the league anymore?
No, he's not. So, just you expect the highest level of quarterback play to be in here. So now, as it stands,
we're not going to do 2019, of the 7. Right?
All right, good. 4 of the 7 qualifying AFC teams are on backup quarterbacks. So 4 of the 7 qualifying AFC playoff teams, backup quarterbacks. So the 7th seed Colts are playing Gardner Minshew right now. Yep, for the remainder of the season because obviously Anthony Richardson was shelved because of his shoulder surgery. The 6th seed Browns are playing the elite Joe Flacco.
Elite.
He is, elite, right? So then obviously Deshaun Watson also has a shoulder injury. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson, concussion. Yeah, right. And then PJ Walker just sucks. So we're talking about not the 1st, not the 2nd, not the 3rd, but the 4th option coming off of the streets and then coming and playing, right? And shout out to Joe.
Staying ready, baby. Stay ready.
We're talking about backup quarterback still. And then the 5th seed Steelers, we have Kenny Pickett being injured, but it doesn't matter. Kenny Pickett sucks anyways, but he has an ankle injury, and now we're starting Mitch Trubisky.
Who sucks more?
And then now we have the Jags are going to be moving forward with CJ Beathard because of the injury to Trevor Lawrence.
My guy.
Where Walker Little stepped on his foot. And then we also have the 8th seed looking in CJ Stroud, who is in concussion protocol. Right now, as it stands, rumor is he's about 60-40 to not play. So that's kind of where he stands right now as of December 13th. And then we have the 10th seed Bengals being led by Drew's favorite player in the league.
Folsom High School's own Jake Browning.
Mm-hmm. And then and if we're going to look at the other side as well, the NFC is being, has the 6th seed of Josh Dobbs, obviously being benched now. Nick Mullins leading the Vikings to that 6th seed as it currently. So 5 of the 14 playoff teams this season, if we're in today, they have backup passers. Considering the Super Bowl odds before the season even started, we have the 4th likeliest to make the playoffs was the Bengals, but Joe Burrow being out. And then we have the Jets being tied for 7th, and then Aaron Rodgers goes out and he blows out his Achilles on the first play. Everyone wants to watch, right, Burrow and Lawrence on what was it, Monday Night Football. They don't want to watch Jake Browning and Beathard, except maybe you might be the only one who wants to watch Jake Browning. You know,
you're missing out on my boy. He's killing it. He's exciting.
in some type of overtime, exciting game, just like some type of Ravens Rams-esque type game. But we don't get that. We're robbed because of injuries this year, and it's really disappointing. And I know there's a big discussion around turf and versus grass, and not all of it's having to do with that. A lot of them are shoulder injuries like Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson, but then there's some other freak accident plays like Trevor Lawrence. We've seen a lot of injuries this year, season-ending injuries this year in general, but especially to quarterbacks, we're seeing a lot of them. What are your thoughts on this?
The injury thing I think is interesting. I do think that if you go into an NFL locker room, they do not want to play on those fake turfs. They talk about it. The 49ers talk about it a lot.
Mm.
I don't think that it's something that's going to change, at least until the next CBA is renegotiated. Turf isn't that expensive, and if the owners feel like their star players are getting hurt on it, then they'll make the change. But I think it all comes back to the conditioning of their bodies and the practice, and they don't practice like they used to. And I also think
Yeah.
it's you pay these players so much money now that nobody's cutting their finger off on the sideline to get back into the game. And
Right.
there's a lot of the older generation that'll tell you the players just aren't as tough as they used to be. But with the concussion protocols and where they're at, and teams understanding that one game doesn't, if Brock Purdy sprains his ankle and we have 3 of our 4 remaining games against the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Commanders, Sam Darnold can't win us those games. He probably could,
Yeah.
if Trent Williams kind of gets hurt a little bit. Like, I think teams are just so much more cautious now because of the amount of money. I saw a thing that, like, what NFL teams were originally bought for, and there was like, I don't know if the Steelers or something were bought for like $500 back in the 30s or something like that. Like, these teams are all $10 billion franchises. I don't
Right.
even know. The next team that came up for sale would be $7, $8, $9 billion. And everybody says that the Cowboys are valued at the highest. There's not even a value on the Cowboys because there's only like 3 people in the world that could afford to buy them. So it's hard to put a value on that. But the teams are so lucrative now. They make so much money that it's, season-ending injuries are one thing. But like we talked about last week, it all comes back to money. And, teams don't want to put their star players out there if they're not 100% healthy because, it's the team being out there and winning the game is just as important as the player being out there and selling the jersey. Don't let anyone kid you that it's all comes down to the money figure, and people are watching. The ratings on Jake Browning's game are just like the same amount of ratings, maybe not a 49ers Cowboys playoff game. The NFL would cut off its left arm to have the 49ers Cowboys play every year in the playoffs, but it all just comes down to money. And part of that money is those players not getting hurt in training camp, so they don't practice as much anymore, and their bodies aren't conditioned. Look at Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa had a terrible first month of the season once he finally got into camp, and now he's averaging 1.5 sacks every single game since like week 5. So it's just one of those things.
I think something to consider too is the whole players these days are soft, and the whole hypothetical about, hey, Brock's going to be out for the next couple of games. What are we going to do? You're not going to go out in there and play him. I think the difference, and I think a really good look at this too, is one is the medical science nowadays can prolong your career a very, very long time now compared to before. Before, of course, you're going to go play hurt because, shit, you only got like maybe 7, 8 years, if that, in the league. I mean, you might have 6 or 7. Now you got a lot longer in the league because of the safety concerns, because of the medical science. And a good way to look at it now, too, on top of that, is how old are some of these players that are getting injured, right? If you look at Anthony Richardson, or if let's say Brock got hurt, you're shutting those guys down for the season. If particularly Brock, you're shutting him down and you're letting him come back in the playoffs, and he's going to play. He's going to play healthy, right? You're shutting Anthony Richardson's going to shut himself down. It's not like he made that decision by himself. He had consultations with his own agent and with doctors and with the team, and he shut himself down. He said, I'm going to have the surgery. I'm going to shut myself down. Because why? Because he's young and he has a long career ahead of him, hopefully. And then you go and you look at the flip side of an older guy who maybe doesn't have a lot of time. He has maybe a couple of seasons left in him, and he wants to go out there and play next week in Aaron Rodgers, right? Bro just blew out his Achilles not that long ago, it felt like, and now he wants to come play. It just doesn't happen. But he wants to push himself out there because I see every single time that I see the post on ESPN, people are like, why? What's the point? What's the point? What's the point? It's kind of unprecedented to see a guy that old have that significant of an injury and then still want to come back and play the very next year, or in this case, the same year. He doesn't have that much longer left. And if the Jets even have the tiniest of possibilities to make it to the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers gives them that best opportunity to make the playoffs. He's going to want to play. All these other younger guys, it's not because they're soft. It's because they got a long career ahead of them, man. I mean, Brock, we're talking about Brock has like a 10, 12, 13-year career ahead of the dude. Like, he's not done. He has a long time ahead. If he gets hurt now, we're not going to go ahead and risk it just because, we don't want him to be seen as soft. Like, he's going to play through the injury because he's a tough dude. Congratulations. Now he risked that high ankle sprain injury to go ahead and plague him for the next 10 years. And now you guys can't make the playoffs because he's always injured because he risked it the one time. That's kind of where I stand on that.
I also think that when you drag it back to the business side of the football team is what fans don't understand is owners are not fans. Like, they're not fanatics like we are. Like, we don't live and die by. Jerry Jones would never admit this, but if the Cowboys make it to the NFC Championship game, that's a win for him because he just made a crap ton of money. Every owner wants to win the Super Bowl. If you guys lose to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, I'm going to be how many weeks we're going to put this podcast on hold if we beat you guys again or not do any NFL segments. We're just going to be doing NBA segments. Like, you're going to be depresto like you were. Man, I didn't do any offseason work on the draft this year because I was so upset about Brock Purdy blowing out his UCL. The owners don't care. They don't.
Yeah, you and I were both pretty upset about that.
They want to win. They want to win. Of course they do, but they're there to make money. So when you're protecting the long-term aspect of the franchise and you can win the Super Bowl this year and then miss the playoffs for the next 10 years, or you can be in the playoffs for the next 10 years and never win a Super Bowl, none of these owners would be honest with you, but we know which ones they would pick. We know which one they would pick. They would pick the playoffs for the next 10 years. So you got to protect the long-term outlook of the franchise. And that's why the fringe players play. That's also why when the fringe players get pulled over for DUI or domestic violence or one of these other things, they're cut immediately. But the news cycle on Von Miller is already over. Now, he might have been innocent. I'm not saying he wasn't, but it's not even a topic this week because the long-term financial aspect of the franchise is what matters at every